Do you have the gift of gab and like talking about interesting topics? Are you often called opinionated by your friends and family? Then come to Anchor where you can be all of the above and get paid for it. Along with being one of the easiest systems to create contact with, Anchor supplies everything you need and can be used from your smartphone or computer. They even distribute your content for you so that you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. Just download the Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. Okay, hello Internet family. This is Anjanette Potter, also known as Adam's Rib, and you are listening to 31 Days of Global Feminism. So I came across, this is my second time hearing about this case within the past couple days. So if you don't know, let me go ahead and let Google be my friend and look up Chris Brown. So Chris Brown is in the news again for some stuff that has nothing to do with his music career again. Okay, and the problem that I have a problem when someone is famous for something and your personal life and different other stuff begins to make the news more than your latest album. That means your life is a little out of control and needs to be reined in. So let me see, legal issues. So we already know about his domestic assault of Rihanna. So I don't need to go into that. Other legal issues, everything from scuffles with Drake, altercations with Frank Ocean, other stuff. So basically, threatening a woman with a gun. I'm gonna need Chris Brown to rein it in. Okay, so let me see. So here we go. I don't know if this is the case that they're talking about because I thought there was a case older than this. But in January 2022, an anonymous woman filed a civil suit accusing Brown of raping her on a yacht in Miami back in 2020. So this might be the case that I'm thinking of. Court documents revealed that she was not pursuing a criminal case and remained in contact with Brown after the alleged incident took place, visiting his home on 2 separate occasions in California to listen to him record music. The woman is attempted to sue him for $25 million, and he denied the allegations and later submitted text messages to Miami PD indicating a long-term consensual relationship with the accuser. So, according to TMZ, Brown plans to countersue her for defamation, and the accuser's lawyer dropped the case against him, indicating that she was unaware of their messages and the specifics of their relationship. Now, there were so let me go into my little commentary. So today I want to talk about false accusations of rape. So Lil Duval reacted to Chris's pulling out receipts against his accusers. And he, said something like, so if Chris Brown didn't have those texts, y'all would have automatically took this woman's side. I hate when men do shit like this. And I hate it because I hate when black women, and it isn't only black women, but it's black men against us. Let me say this. If a brother is being truly falsely accused, and I don't know one way or the other because Chris Brown contributes to a lot of his own stuff. Okay? But anyway, so Chris Brown didn't have those texts, y'all would have automatically took the woman's side. Sad part is somebody can come tomorrow saying the same thing and y'all still will take her side. Now, so I commented on this, and I just said, I will not let men put me on a guilt trip for false accusations, which, by the way, only account for about 2 to 8% of reported rapes, because rape is still very underreported. Let me say that much. Still very underreported, and 95% of rapists never see the inside of a courtroom. So the overwhelming majority of men that are actually guilty of rape are still walking around free. Okay? So what happens is, and unfortunately, what you get, so let's go into Lil Duval. Lil Duval, because I'm like, who the hell is Lil Duval? So Roman Powell, born June 12, 1977, better known by his stage name Lil Duval, is a stand-up comic. I was like, okay. And recording artist. In 2005, he was a finalist on BET's comedy competition series, Coming to the Stage. Powell is a series regular to the MTV shows Guy Code and Hip Hop Squares. From 2013 to 2014, he hosted the video show Ain't That America on MTV2. So he's relatively young. I mean, young compared to me. He's 44, so he's not that young. And so I saw in here where he did did an album called Smile Bitch. Is a song, no, so Smile Bitch is a song recorded by stand-up comedian Lil Duval, and also known as Smile, Living My Best Life, and it features vocals from American rapper Snoop Dogg and Bald Jeezy, and it's sampled to, and it was co-written by recording artist and writer Mitchell L. Excuse me, starring Michelle A. Mitchell L. And it contains a sample of "Curious" by Midnight Star. So it's being sampled. The song that is being sampled, I remember the song now, and yeah, it is "Curious." It is "Curious" by Midnight Star is the song. So I didn't know that song was supposed to be called Smile Bitch, which makes him look a whole lot worse. Okay, because that sounds just a tiny bit misogynistic. I always think it's interesting, and we're going to talk about false accusations, because many times people do not have a clear-cut understanding of what a false accusation is. Anyway, but like I said, I will not. One of the things that I really resent as far as black men and their demands for loyalty from black women, if you are guilty of rape, I don't owe you shit. Let me say that much. I think a lot of black men use things that have actually happened to black men as a result of being railroaded by white supremacy, being railroaded by the criminal justice system, being railroaded all the way around, and they use it to play on women. They take things that actually happened, that were actually, and if you see, like I said, I'm going to put in another shameless plug here. If you see Kamal Bell's We Need to Talk About Bill Cosby, and he talks about why so many people jumped on the bandwagon to defend Bill Cosby. And it has to do with black men's history in this country. A lot of innocent brothers have had white womanhood, or the protection of white womanhood, and I don't know what color Chris Brown's accuser was or is, because she's still alive. But a lot of innocent black men have been railroaded, murdered, lynched, all in the name of, quote, white womanhood. And a lot of times you have people who go tone deaf, and you're like, okay, but Bill Cosby's, for, if you want to do the rabbit trail on the race of the victim, all of his victims weren't white. And that's been a myth about that case. As a matter of fact, the one woman that they're not, messing with him or trying to pull him into court, pull him into jail over here recently, is a light-skinned black woman. And if you go into rape stats, and I wish people would, you would see that false accusations are not that high. So, like I said, all information is coming out of Wikipedia. So the false accusation of rape. So I, said, the majority of rapists are still walking around free. Now, add to that what I said about the whole thing with Roger Ailes and Bill O'Reilly. Fired, no charges pressed against them, nobody coming after them to put them in jail. Settled with the women for $50 million that they had to basically split 3 ways. So that means what? About 15 or however much, 12 million or something a piece, which probably didn't cover none of those women's salaries or the money that they lost having to leave and having to sign a non-disclosure, so you can't discuss it with anybody or you forfeit the money. Because with non-disclosures, they will come after that money and try to take it back if you talk to anybody. Okay, and compare that to the 61 million, which basically means these men got $30-some million a piece upon being fired for their actions. And I think a couple young ladies did accuse them of rape, or the fancy smancy politically correct term of sexual assault. Okay, so when I hear people like Lil Duval say, well, see, I immediately thought he was guilty, and blah, 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 blah. Mug, the overwhelming majority of men who are guilty are still free. Victims are still not getting the justice that they deserve. And the problem with the false being touted as though that it's this is the norm. Women are just walking around looking for reasons to falsely accuse, wealthy men of sexual assault. So a false accusation of rape occurs when a person says they have been raped, or that particular person committed a rape when in fact no rape has occurred. In a 2010 study of 136 reports of sexual assault investigated by university police, 5.9% were coded as false reports. 44.9% did not proceed to any prosecution or disciplinary action. 35.3% were referred to prosecution or disciplinary action. This was in a university. And 13.9% contains insufficient information to be coded. According to a 2013 book on forensic victimology, the true percentage remains unknown due to the varying definitions of what constitutes a false accusation. Rates of false accusation are sometimes inflated or misrepresented due to conflation with terms such as unfounded. These designations, which allow law enforcement to close cases without arriving at a conclusion, are used to describe reports without enough evidence, as opposed to cases where the accuser is not credible or says that the account is not true. False rape accusations are notably used by women in positions of power or privilege against men who are underprivileged, such as white women against African American men in the United States, often resulting in acts of violence. Actions like lynchings and actual rape can befall the men and women associated with the accused, such as African Americans, in retaliation to the fictitious reports. Causes of false accusations of rape, and I was looking up information on that particular thing, what they call the, white woman, the white false accuser trope, and I really wasn't able to find it in time for this podcast, but if I'm able to find it, then I will talk about it later on this month. So rape is definitely a feminist issue, and it's a feminist issue worldwide, because not enough women who actually are raped, and the majority of cases that are filed, it is the woman was raped, out of the reported ones. Okay, so causes of false accusations of rape fall into two categories: non-deliberate deception, such as false memories and lies. So false memories, there are several ways a alleged victim can accidentally come to believe that they have been raped by a person that they accuse. These include, but are not limited to, recovered memory therapy, memories of sexual abuse recovered, in quotes, during therapy in the absence of any reporting evidence, based on the Freudian notion of repression. So in the 80s, the late 80s and early 90s, there were a few notable cases of people having what they call repressed memory syndrome. So in order to know anything about this kind of thing, you would have to know what constitutes repressed memory. So a repressed memory is basically a memory that has been just that, repressed. It actually happened to the person, but the person kind of pushed it down, didn't acknowledge it, and kind of went on with their life as though it didn't happen. And somehow or another, the one case that I read about that made the headlines, that kind of, made the case for repressed memory, was a woman started having all these nightmares, and so they were night terrors, which is kind of two different things, but she kept having all these nightmares and kept having all this post-traumatic stress symptoms. And so she went to somebody, and she found out that she had repressed the memory of her grandfather, I think it might have been, raping or killing one of her friends. So I don't remember what the outcome of that case was. I don't remember if they wound up finding out that I don't know what all of it was, but whatever she said was enough to get this grandfather arrested and going to jail. The victim's confusion of the memory of the real rapist with the memory of someone else. Memory conformity. Memory can be contaminated when co-witnesses discuss their collection of events. So that's somebody getting together with other people, and then all of a sudden the story changes. So a lot of people have repressed memory confused with false memory syndrome. So false memory syndrome is when you are with a therapist that's a little on the overzealous side, and you're discussing something that happened to you, and the therapist kind of grooms or leads the victim into believing that they were assaulted or abused. So false memory syndrome is a bit of an offshoot from repressed memory. Repressed memory is when you press down something that really actually happened. And so I'm going to go, repression in psychoanalysis. It's a key concept in psychoanalysis where it is understood as a defense mechanism that ensures that what is unacceptable to your conscious mind And would, if recalled, arouse anxiety, is prevented from entering into it. So basically, the word almost sounds like what it is. They press it down because they really don't want to deal with it in their conscious mind. They don't want to even acknowledge that it happened. Because to do so would probably, make them a victim of, the straitjacket. So now out and out lies. An accuser may have several motivations to falsely claim they have been raped. There is disagreement on how many categories that may be put into. Kanin, 1994, put them into 3: revenge, producing an alibi, or to get sympathy or attention. Author Sandra Newman listed 4 in 2017, and according to D. Zutter et al., Canon's division is inadequate and one should categorize at least 8. I'm thinking that whoever D. Zutter is probably a male. Because men always want to motives for filing a false accusation of rape. Okay, so one would be material gain, to receive money, professional promotion, or other material benefits. An alibi. A false accusation is used to cover up other behavior, such as being late or absent from an appointment. Revenge, to retaliate against a disliked person by damaging the reputation, freedom, or finances. Attention, an attempt to receive any type of attention, positive or negative, by anyone. Sympathy, a special type of attention seeking whereby the complainant tries to improve a personal relationship with a specific person. A disturbed mental state. This can include false memories, sexual hallucinations, or pathological lying. Relabeling. Consensual sex is labeled rape to the police because of its disappointing, shameful character. D. Zutter et al. Argues that a distinction should be made between some acts occurring during a consensual sexual encounter that a participant did not want or had no desire to engage in, which would, I think, still be rape. Let's say if I consented to vaginal and you decided to try to take anal instead, you have to be quite clear about the type of sex that you are consenting to. That some acts during a consensual encounter that a participant did not want or had no desire to engage in, but nonetheless gave consent to please their partner on one hand, and rape, non-consensual, on the other. I have difficulty with people who want to make that a gray area, because if I've said yes to one type of sex, and the most common one is saying yes to one guy and the guy trying to slide another guy in on you, which happens more often than I've realized, or some other mess. If you did not consent to it, you did not know is no. Coerced sex is rape, and rape, non-consensual sex, on the other. But that many lay people and even some scholars do not make this distinction and confuse the two. It is often when acts of such unwanted consensual sex. I have a problem with people who try to confuse that. How do you have unwanted consensual sex? If you didn't want it, that's why the feminists keep saying, and different other people who research sexual consent and sexual assault keep saying and keep trying to get into a lot of men's thick heads. If it was gotten any other way other than an enthusiastic yes, then it is coercion. And if you are coercing a person to have sex with you, then it is rape. It is sexual assault. If you are coerced, if you are being coerced, that's unwanted. Okay? When such accounts of unwanted consensual sex are told to friends and family, the latter interpret it as rape. Because it is. Because it is. Because it is. If you did not want to do it, and the person coerced you and kept pressuring you and pressuring you and pressuring you until you cracked, then they are guilty. Okay? You have to teach your sons, you have to teach your young men that when women say no, respect it. And don't come back to it and don't fool with it until the woman, if the woman never wants to say yes, that's her prerogative. It's like I said yesterday on yesterday's podcast about the N-wordization of Pam and Tommy. I don't care how many times this woman has posed nude, and one of the things that I'm hearing is, well, we had a consensual relationship. You can't. It is possible to sexually assault. Do I? You know. It is possible to be, and I'm going to say this, because I don't want to get into no mess. So it is possible to be in a consensual relationship with someone. It is possible to be married and still rape your wife. So just because you are in a relationship with someone or romantically involved with someone does not mean that you cannot rape or sexually assault that person. Okay? It is often when it counts and put the complainant under pressure to file an allegation. Regret. After having consensual sex, a complainant experienced negative. Okay, this is a new term, and I think it is a new term under the men's rights people. Labeling rape as regret sex. And this is a new term. This is a relatively new term, and I honestly do believe that it is the invention of men who are actually guilty of rape. After having had consensual sex, a complainant experiences negative feelings such as disgust, shame, and sorrow. When others notice this and ask about the source of these negative feelings, they are prone to view the encounter as rape and put the complainant under pressure to file an allegation. Facilitated communication. That is a scientifically discredited technique that attempts to aid communication by people with autism and other disabilities who are nonverbal. Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna let y'all. And the third category is they don't know. 20% of complainants said they did not know why they filed a false allegation. So estimates of prevalence. Prevalence is the likelihood of something occurring. So it is extremely difficult to assess the prevalence of false accusations. All jurisdictions have a distinct classification of false accusation, resulting in these cases being combined with other types of cases, where the accuser did not physically resist the suspect or sustain injuries under headings such as unfounded or unproved, which doesn't mean it was false. There are many reasons other than falsity that may result in a rape case being closed or as unfounded or unproven. D. Canio, 1993, states that while researchers and prosecutors do not agree on the exact percentage of cases in which there is sufficient evidence to conclude that allegations were false, they generally agree on a range of 2 to 10%. Due to varying definitions of false accusations, the true percentage remains unknown. So I've told you my testimony of leaving a church because of the different types of sexual misconduct that I felt was going on within their denomination. So they had a habit of trying to orchestrate scenarios in which the victim would be thought of as falsely accusing. And so I remember praying about it, and the Holy Spirit was just like, it's another way of damaging that person's credibility. So that when they do what they really want to do to that person, no one will believe them. Now, one of the number one reasons why victims don't come forward is because of fear of not being believed, especially if the accused is somebody famous or wealthy. Especially in cases where you're talking about somebody famous. I'm going to talk some more, and then I'm going to get to my personal take. I remember hearing about this case and kind of wondered because of it being Chris Brown. And the fact that many times when guys are guilty of domestic violence and having violent encounters and having a hot temper, it is possible for them to graduate to sexual assault, but not in all cases. I think he personally needs to just keep his nose clean and stay out of mess. Okay, so due to varying definitions, and I'm going to say the rest of what I feel when I get done reading here. The true percentage remains unknown. A 2009 study of rape cases across Europe found the proportion of cases designated range from 4 to 9%. So I'm going to say this, a very, very small percent of reported rape cases are false accusations. The reason why I'm commenting on this is because in the African American community, there are some who have a habit of labeling black men victims when someone comes forward because of all of our past involvement in the justice system not always doing women or men right when it came to false accusations. We have basically had to deal with issues within our community because of the whole thing of lynchings and different other in protecting white womanhood. So another complicating factor is that data regarding false allegations generally do not come from studies designed to estimate the prevalence of false allegations. Rather, they come from reviews of data regarding investigations and prosecutions within the criminal justice system. The goal of such investigations is to determine whether or not there is sufficient evidence to prosecute, not to evaluate the cases for which there is not sufficient evidence to prosecute and for which there is not sufficient evidence to prosecute and classify such cases as false or true. Archives of Sexual Behavior. Claire E. Ferguson and John M. Malouf conducted a meta-analysis of confirmed rape reporting in the Archives of Sexual Behavior in 2016 and found that 5.2% of cases were confirmed false reports. So that's still low. So that's still within the family that I said. 2 to 8% of cases, reported cases, is there ever a false accusation? And that's even, and think about this. That's even with the railroading of the criminal justice system of black men. That's even with all this other 2 to 8% is pretty low. But I'm going to get to my reasons for making this podcast, and yeah, I'm not talking. found that 5.2% were confirmed false reports. The authors note that the total false reporting rate would be greater than the 5% found here if possible rape allegations were also included along confirmed allegations. Okay, so that's still not very high. And so, if you want to really do the rabbit trail on this and go into Wikipedia, be my guest to do so. You want to type in false accusations, because there's all kinds of different data in here. And it's actually pretty interesting. There's also police handling of rape reports. I think that if rape were about anything other than sex, because I think one of the reasons why so many men, go through all this stuff about, false accusations, she's lying, regret sex, and then there's historical racism, which they've included in here. But the thing that got me is the number of women who seem to be wanting to prove their loyalty to black men by saying, I didn't think he did it. And all of this other stuff. So I stand by what I said earlier. I commented and I said, I refuse to be guilt tripped into supporting black men in behavior that is wrong. You're not doing that by doing this and blah, 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 blah. But the thing so my reasons for making the podcast, there have been a lot, the guys who ride on the false accusation narrative have been rather loud lately. And a lot of them are being loud for absolutely no reason. Like I said before, still you have 90 some percent of guilty men walking around free. Okay, and it just really did something to me, so I just made my statement. I'm like, and I'm gonna thank you, Jesus. So one reason it kind of bothers me, because it's almost as though you have black people, white and black, who feel like you can't be black if you don't support every black man that has ever been accused of rape, whether you believe they are guilty or not. Now think about the fact that 90-some percent of rape victims that are black are raped by a black man. So where does that leave black women who may be, who may be accusing a man of raping them, or may have been raped by a black man? Where does that leave black women? I watched the one film by one of Russell Simmons' accusers. They did a documentary about the women who were sexually assaulted by Russell Simmons, or alleged to have been assaulted by Russell Simmons. And they made a pretty, they made a pretty compelling case. And one of the women stated, if white women are not being believed, what do you think is happening with black women? 90-some percent of women who are raped by black men are black. They're not white women falsely accusing and yelling rape. They're black women. Okay, so the one thing that kind of bothers me about, the people who want to jump on the bandwagon about Chris Brown, especially in recent years, is it seems like there's a thing with black women having to prove to black men that they have their backs by believing a black man when he's wrong even when he's wrong. And I will say this: if you are guilty of sexual assault, I don't owe you dick. I don't owe it to you to prove my loyalty to you by believing a man. You know, no one said. And the funny thing with the Lil Duval, the funny thing with Lil Duval's little accusation is that no one really publicly said one way or the other with Chris Brown whether they believed him or not. So it was Lil Duval's little attempt to put black women on a guilt trip about whether or not they believe Chris Brown or not. You should never ever have your blackness tested on whether or not you believe a man is guilty or innocent of rape. Do I personally believe Chris Brown is guilty? Not sure. I'm on the fence on this, but I will say this much. Chris Brown needs to clean up his act. Chris Brown has needed to clean up his act for quite some time. This is a man who has a long history of violent behavior against both women and men. And you would think that men would clean up their act when they have all these problems. These are the same men who want to judge women like Pamela Anderson and different ones who have a history, you know. So you're supposed to be okay with white men breaking into women's homes and stealing their stuff and making a profit and never spending a day in jail behind it. Okay? But it completely ignore men who have a history of violence toward women and misogyny toward women and be okay and then think they're innocent when these same men are accused of sexual assault. Okay, so my thing is that, but my main issue here is not even that. My main issue here is, as a black woman, and I'm saying this to address all black women, your loyalty to the black community, to a church, or to anybody else is not measured by whether or not you believe a black man when he says he's not guilty of sexual assault. Thank you, Holy Ghost. Your loyalty to the black community is not measured by what you believe when a woman comes forward to allege that a black man has sexually assaulted her. You can believe he's guilty and still retain the use of your black card. You can believe he's guilty and not be being disloyal to the black community. Your blackness is not measured by how you react to an accusation of sexual assault against a black man. There you go, wording. Your loyalty to the black community. God is not kicking you out the black community, and no one else can kick you out of the black community. Many of the men who want you to vote in the affirmative and stick up for these guys are guilty of sexual assault themselves. That's what they're not telling you. I'm not joining the divestors. I'm not divesting. God is not going to force you to divest from the black community if you don't believe that a black man is innocent of being accused of sexual assault. That is not a measurement of your blackness. What is a bigger measure of your blackness is your willingness to weigh each case individually and believe in justice being served one way or the other. If Chris Brown isn't guilty of this, then yeah, I'm glad that he, didn't get found guilty, because I don't want no more brothers getting railroaded by the justice system. But I also don't want any more women being railroaded by the justice system either. I don't want any more black victims being railroaded by the justice system and not being able to have their day in court. Because when it comes to that whole scenario, black women get railroaded more than anybody when it comes to sexual assault. Your loyalty to the black community is not measured by your belief in whether or not a black man is innocent of the charges being leveled against him. As a matter of fact, I remember thinking earlier about a case where somebody was obviously railroaded, and that was the Exonerated Five. So we know that the guys who were actually the one guy, compared to five guys, because I remember when the whole thing was going down, and I'm like, well, wouldn't there be wouldn't there be an overabundance of DNA if there were five as opposed to one? Like, I don't get that, and I'm not trying to make rape jokes or be humorous. I don't get that. And unfortunately, in the case of the Exonerated Five, the guy who did it had to go forward and confess and tell on himself. So the criminal justice system weren't even any help in that. And I remember when the whole thing was going down, when they thought that these young men might be guilty, there were black women stating, they had black women on record going, to hang their asses and blah, 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 blah. Because, like she said, I'm a woman, and, fear jogging at night because of dangers related to sexual assault. Now, you could have very well thought that there were many women at the time that they were falsely accused that thought that they might be guilty, were open to the fact that they might have been guilty. Okay, because many times you do see them be guilty. Not a one of them women has lost her black card. Do not ever feel pressured to side with a man who may be guilty just because you think it's a measure of your blackness or loyalty to black men. Okay? The first person you owe your loyalty is Jesus Christ, number one, if you're a born-again Christian. But then the next person is, yourself. Okay? It is not a measure of your blackness to not believe that a black man is 100% innocent of any charges that are being brought against him, especially for sexual assault. Never believe that you have to do that. And never let any black man put you on a guilt trip. Yes, we recognize that brothers have been railroaded. Yes, we recognize that the criminal justice system has a long history of falsely accusing black men, of weaponizing white womanhood or the protection of white womanhood against a lot of black men. There's a long tradition of that. Okay, but never allow the events that are really truly happening, the cases of injustices that are actually happening. These are events that actually happen. Black men were lynched, black men were murdered. Okay, I remember with somebody, coming to me, talking to me about the Emmett Till case, and I said he did not pass away. He was murdered. I'm not softening my language. He was murdered. He was murdered, and he was murdered because some white woman said he smiled at her. Because after all, smiling at white women is a crime. Okay, he was murdered. So I am 100% there for those of my people that are innocent and being railroaded. I'm 100% there with the Africans that are being unjustly treated by the Ukraine people. 100% there. Okay? I 100% still oppose Russia's involvement against the Ukraine. I am 100% there for my people. You can be 100% there for your people and still believe R. Kelly is guilty. You can be 100% black and still feel Bill Cosby is guilty. 51 women is a lot to look at and ignore. So unless they come up with something saying that some exec paid off all these women and all of them are not white, you can be what you could have been 100% black and believe that Chris Brown was guilty. I will admit myself, when I first heard about him sexually assaulting anyone, I had two brains working. One side of my brain said, well, it finally happened. Somebody to finally come forward and let me say this: domestic violence is a crime. So they finally then caught up with him with a rape accusation. I don't know if I believe it or not, because we're talking about Chris Brown, who has a record of getting into trouble. Part of my brain was like, like, really? Like, sexual assault? Like, because most of the time when you hear about Chris Brown, you're hearing about domestic violence type related stuff with his women, or you're hearing about him being into it with another man and winding up in fisticuffs there. So you're hearing other stuff, and you can only guess what other stuff is. So it's really kind of all across the board. But I think if this is the case that I'm thinking of, this is probably one of the few times I've heard about sexual assault being linked to him. So, but let me say this, as a woman, but when I saw Little Duval's remarks, I was like, okay, it's time for an old head to speak up. Okay? And so the reason for me making this podcast is because I want black women to be let off the hook. You are under now, if you actually believe somebody's innocent, that's one thing. But do not allow a bunch of dusties to guilt you into believing into sticking up for somebody simply because they're black. And because you feel out of obligation because of the criminal justice past history of treatment of black men. Do not allow that to put you on a guilt trip and make you believe that you have to prove your loyalty. And I'm saying this with air quotes. Prove your loyalty to men who historically haven't been loyal to us. Okay, do not let anybody make you feel as though your loyalty to the black community rests on you believing that every woman that is coming forward against a black man is falsely accusing him, because all of them aren't. Remember, as I said, the majority of victims of sexual assault by a black man are black women and girls. So remember your loyalty to black women first. But before that, remember your loyalty to Jesus Christ. You have a duty to want justice for the victims. I want justice for the victims as much as I do for those that are being falsely accused. I don't want anybody that's falsely accused going to jail. But I also don't want anybody that's actually being sexually assaulted by anybody to not be due their day in court and get all that is coming to them, even therapy and everything else that was going to put them on a healing path. Anyway, so this is Anjanette Potter, also known as Adam's Rib. You are listening to 31 Days of Global Feminism. I will be doing another podcast after this one. You guys be blessed and have a good Wednesday. And enjoy your hump day. That is the sound of me blowing you a kiss. Hello, you have reached the message line for Adam's Rib Media Ministry. If you would like to give me a shout out, recommend some topics for discussion, or give an opinion about a topic I've already discussed, either on my blogs or here on my podcast, leave a message and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.